Venerable Mahasangha, Chief Custodian of the Tooth Relic, Dr. Nilanga Dayala, one of my most treasured places that I have ever been, the Dalada Maligava. My beloved uncle, Dr. 𝑃𝑟𝑜𝑓, the faculty of 𝐶𝑖𝐵𝐴, who've produced these wonderful graduates. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor, pleasure, and a privilege, truly, to address you all now. So let me first begin my 2 cents of words here with my heartiest congratulations to all the new graduates. So please join me first in congratulating all our graduates. And the same heartiest congratulations go to the very people who have pushed you, who probably have woken you up in the morning, who've given you a cup of tea, who've given you bread, breakfast, dinner, lunch, I'm sure, your parents. So this is to you, beloved parents, and your brothers and sisters who are already up there. In my quick speech today, I'll give you a bit of background about me, I'll give a bit of background about what I have done, my experience, but mostly, I'll talk to you about 5 things that I personally believe, that I think are important to you beyond this degree. And I will end it with a bit of caution for the journey that you have ahead of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, in a celebration, we put up a lot of balloons. And when we put balloons, what happens? We blow air into it. We blow air into it regardless of the color, whether the balloon is red, blue, or white, or green, or gray. The amount of air that you put into your balloon will determine how high it will go. Correct? Doesn't matter what color the balloon is. So just like that, today, yes, it is great that you're getting your degree. But you've got to think a little bit beyond that, because you've already achieved this. You've already done that. Done. So today, think about how you're going to make it bigger so that you can thrive in the world that you have in front of you. And like great Dr. Nelson Mandela said, education truly is the world's gift, the armory to change the world. No question about that. But ladies and gentlemen, education itself will not get you there. So when you think about the mindset of the individual, thinking about it as a balloon, what you need to insert there is your mindset here. And in many presentations that we saw today, talking about the mindfulness, thinking about what we're doing, and I'm not going to preach Buddhism here in front of this noble crowd here. But yet, it is important for us to recognize the value that we insert to your mind in terms of the values, beliefs, and cultural richness that we already have. In terms of the education, Richard Forbes mentioned Malcolm Forbes mentioned the founder of Forbes magazine and the entrepreneur of the United States. He said that the education is not about the education that we receive at the university, but it is about how open your mind is going to be. Think about that for a moment, how open it is going to make your mind, so that we see Not the degree that I have, not the degree that you have, but the human being who lives inside us. It's very important that we recognize it. For the values of the individuals who are graduating today, and perhaps also beyond the values of the individuals who are graduating today, let me start with 5 things that I think personally that you should cultivate and you should take into the leadership. And why I'm talking about it? Because the world tomorrow belongs to you. You're not going to take over the world, but you must take care of the world. As we all know, the world as we know now is in a bit of a problem. There are 2 wars happening in either side of the world right now. We just came out of a pandemic, probably you and I can't even remember now. The millions who had died, well, they died. We've forgotten about it because we got TikTok now. We live in an absolute chaotic world. So in this world, for you to serve as a leader, to take care of this world, to take care of our values, what do we need to have? Well, number 1, I would say, is the curiosity. Curiosity, the humility that to say that, hey, I have a PhD, personally me, but I don't know much of the world's things that are happening. Remember, we are one planet in a billion galaxy, and you're an individual who has done 1 degree. Put that into perspective. You will know how little we know. Have the curiosity to know that I need to know much more than what I know already now. It's such an important thing that we often forget, that we often think, that often sit behind the facade of a degree to think that, hey, I know everything now. You may know a bit, but use that to understand the future that lies ahead. How do we do that, one would ask? Read, think. Read and think, listen to the Dhamma. It is not only one pathway that would take you to the nirvana or to the destination of your religion. It opens up your mind. And what better place than here, ladies and gentlemen? What better place than here? To understand, to recognize, to appreciate the values of mindfulness, like Dr. Pali said. What better place than here, than Siba, your privilege, to get the values of this, than Siba about ethics, to treat another human being in a nice and passionate way. Number 2, ladies and gentlemen, I would say is the adaptability. They say we live in a VUCA world, V-U-C-K. V stands for, anyone? Volatile. It's volatile. It's fluctuating. It's changing. We didn't know a couple of weeks ago that this would happen in Palestine and Israel. We didn't know a couple of years ago that COVID would be the game-changing thing for any and everyone. Volatile. U is uncertain. VUCA. U is uncertain. C is complex. You would go to a workplace who would work with a company in Germany who would manufacture in China, send things all around the world in matter of seconds. Complex. And C is ambiguous. Nothing is clear. In a VUCA world, you must learn to see the failures of past large corporations that you probably have never even heard about. Let me give a couple of examples. You may have not heard about BlackBerry. There was a time in the US, not long ago, 10, 15 years ago, in the US, everyone in the US government would swear by a phone called BlackBerry. We would never use anything else. Market share was nearly about 60-65%. Today, doesn't exist. Adaptability somehow gotten lost in the way. The mindset of knowing all ruins it all. And that could happen to you. Not just the BlackBerry, but also other companies, large corporations like Nokia, Blockbuster, and many others. Kodak Eastman. These are companies that we have heard, and especially the older generation, including me now, you would see don't exist anymore. Why? They got lost in the thought that, hey, we've always done it this way. Why should we change? Don't be in that trap. Without any hesitation, I would point out to your rector to see, and this is not bragging because he's my uncle, to see how much this is important, how much of adaptability is required. The amount of readings that he does, the amount of studies that he does, he didn't have to do any of that. He doesn't. I'll give you another example. That's from my own dad. Back in the 80s, he read somewhere that unless that you are computer literate, he read somewhere, unless you're computer literate, you're not going to be considered as literate. And he took it to his heart. Geez, how am I going to be considered as illiterate now because I don't know computers? And many of the older population here may not know how to do it. But what happened next was he studied. He went for classes to study computing, perhaps at the age of 60. Why? Adaptability is important. These are the things that you must cultivate in your mind. So when you graduate today, yes, celebrate. Yes, have a party. Yes, go to temple and pray, offer prayers to those who have helped you. At the same time, tomorrow start the next journey. Number 3, ladies and gentlemen, is empathy. We are going to walk into a world full of machines. You already have, all of you, with you right now, the phone. But it's going to get bigger, better, smarter, and overrun you and rule you. Literally rule you. And today, if I ask you to lift your hands and say, how many of you are addicted to ice? No one would, I am sure. If I ask you how many of you are addicted to alcohol, probably some of you would lift your hands if you have the guts. But if I ask you how many of you use Facebook, Instagram, or any of the others, I'm sure 80% of the addicts will put their hands up. And today, in the connected world that you and I live in, the biggest problem that we have is loneliness. The biggest problem that we have in the connected world that we live in is loneliness. The suicide rate for the youth is the highest in the world has ever seen. Why? We are lonely. Don't we have 3,000 friends on Facebook? This is where you got to think back and claw your life back literally. In 2012, 11 years ago, thank God, I stopped using Facebook. Because all my research that I did, I found how using the Buddhist principles, scientific, not just hearsay, scientific research found that what sort of a mental damage that it does to your brain. And now you have many other social media platforms. You know how the jealousy now starts, revamps, creates havoc in your mind, sexual desires, how it happens, gossip, how it happens, how you feel left out. Think about these things. Just because the Western world said that, hey, this is good, don't start using it. Think about these things very carefully. Number 4, ladies and gentlemen, that I'd like you to think about is hard work. You may not think about this as a big thing. Hard work, yeah, I've already slogged my life. What are you talking about, Darshana? You may know the great Beatles, the great Apple founder, all attest to one thing: 10,000 hours of practice. 10,000 hours of practice has made them perfect. So consider what you and I have done. Probably nothing. I grew up in a very middle-class background. Not deprived. Again, blessings of the God. Not deprived, but a very middle-class family. We had 2 cars at home. Now you might think, hey, we're middle class. He's talking now rich. We had 2 cars at home, hard-working family. And when one day I asked my dad, I told you this is going to be a personal story. I asked my dad, hey, and this was visible, that we are doing slightly better than my neighborhood. It was visible. I asked my dad, probably small, maybe 10, 15, what's our success, Tati? I grew up in Kotta, by the way. I didn't live in Australia all my life. So he took me out. My dad is one of examples. It was night. He took me out. All street lights, all house lights were off. And he said one thing: you look the neighborhood. So I looked around. He said, all lights are switched off, right? I said, yeah. All other houses. He said, that's the key to our success. In our house, we are the first ones to turn the lights on. We are the last ones to turn the lights off. And that was not FaceTiming or on Facebook or on Instagram or any other thing. Hard work. Get used to that. Because the world in front of you is a highly competitive world. And I'll give you an example. Today we have 400 graduates here, just from one institute. If you take Sri Lanka, you would have 4,000. You probably have about, no, not 4,000, maybe about 14,000 graduates like you and I. And the one sitting next to you and the one sitting behind you. If you take the subcontinent, you would probably go about 140,000 graduates like you and the colleagues next to you, graduating this year right now. If you take the world, multiply that by 10 again, you would have few million, just like you. Now, if you want to make a change in the world, which is my next proposition, number 5 is develop unique selling propositions. You have to be different to the one next to you, one behind you, one in front of you, not by looks. And in fact, get this right. You may think that your looks would count or how handsome you look. It may count probably 10%. It wouldn't care. No one would care after a while. No employer would employ you just because you look beautiful. But the unique selling propositions, why would Darshana be employed at XYZ place? Why would you be employed in XYZ place as opposed to someone else? It's not because I have 2 marks greater than you. Again, no one cares after 10 years. It's not because that I have a first class and you have a second class. Ooh, no. Develop something unique for you. Stop being a follower. We have trained now. I'm following so-and-so on Instagram. Great. Keep following. Be a leader. Margaret Thatcher, some of you probably don't know. It's called the Iron Lady of England, one of the longest serving prime ministers, was told that, was asked the key of her leadership. And it was told that, she mentioned that, I have never followed anyone. Implying that, hey, I'm a leader. I'm not following anyone. I may receive education, learning through others. But I will lead my own way. So, ladies and gentlemen, you follow the 5 things, you will end up in bliss. This is my last point, which is the warning that I'm going to give you. Absolutely not. Whether you will end up in bliss of happiness, joy, because you have followed Darshana's magical 5 principles. So I'm going to be happy, right, forever. Absolutely not. And since I have the microphone only, not preaching about things that I know beyond the venerable monks here, but you will be challenged, you'll be disappointed, you'll be thrown out of the gutters. In every single step that you take, be prepared for it. And you might ask, hey, I've done a degree at 𝑠𝐼𝐵𝐴. I thought, you're going to get somewhere with 𝑠𝐼𝐵𝐴. Why are you now saying that you'll be thrown out into the gutters? Because that's what life is. Be prepared for that. How will you prepare for it, one might ask? Lord Buddha said about suffering, and said everything is impermanent and everything is a suffering. And I'm truly glad that you've studied this at 𝑠𝐼𝐵𝐴. Have expectations within reason where you want to be. Know that your expectations would create this uncertainty, expectation of permanence when everything is impermanent. When everything in the world, your breath, my thought, your chairs, no doubt, your cars, your mother, parents, yourself, when everything is impermanent, you have an expectation that everything will behave the way that I want. Ditch that for a moment and you will live blissfully hereafter. Thank you very much. Congratulations to the class of 2023.